A class about big-picture money topics. My head dropped onto my book like I was hoping to soak up knowledge through my skin. My teacher, Dr. Lang, saw. He wanted to talk with me when class ended. I figured he would yell at me, but really he said, "How many places are you working?" When I told him the truth, he didn't look down on me. He simply gave a knowing look and said, "I have a helper job available. It's mainly typing in numbers. It doesn't give much, but the schedule works around you. Want to test it out?" I said yes right away. That job let me reduce my time at the sandwich place and sit in a cooled room for at least some days. It was also in Dr. Lang's room that I found Jared, a future doctor with lasting shadows under his eyes from test studying, and Mel, a science student, a black girl with woven hair and a brain as quick as a blade. The three of us began working together at the book room on weekends. Bit by bit they turned into the first folks I could really share with. One evening while Jared and I were doing an assignment at 1A, he laughed. "Natalie, when was the last time you actually rested?" I lifted my shoulders. "Middle school maybe?" Mel added in acting like she meant it. "We should form a group, the folks who don't get the idea of relaxing," and just like that, the title, The Survival Trio, was born. They weren't just people from class, they were the only place where I really felt understood. They got the worry of watching every penny on the power bill. They knew what it meant to plan each meal and skip get-togethers, not out of pride, but because we couldn't manage to pay in for food, my family. They never reached out to ask if I was doing okay, never asked what I was learning, how my friends were, if I was tired. Every time my phone rang, I knew it would be one of three things. Mom told me to look at the power bill because the company's a scam. Dad told me to search for a water heater, fix costs, or worse, "Do you have any money left over? I need to buy a few things." Over time, I figured out to breathe out quietly after each call, then get right back to my work as if nothing had occurred, not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew that if I let myself really feel it, I'd fall apart. Each term went by and I kept a grade score above 3.9. I still don't know how I pulled it off, but I just did. I threw myself into books, into work, into anything that could help me forget I was living a life that felt like a shadow. And then, 4 years went by faster than I ever expected. My final spring came bathed in soft golden sunlight and a race against time to finish my senior thesis. I was picked for a respected internship at a green investment company in Austin. And my friends rose too. Jared was let into medical school and Mel got an offer from a tiny materials research program. We, the survival trio, had climbed through every layer of dust, every hidden crack, every invisible barrier. We stood strong at the top of our own making, ready to step across that final threshold. Graduation, and me. I believed, with all my heart, that this time, my parents would come. They had to. How could they miss? The day their daughter became the first college graduate in the family. I had started planning for that day, 3 months earlier. I sent an official invite to the house, complete with a campus map, parking directions, a list of nearby restaurants, and a handwritten note. I already booked the hotel rooms so you don't need to worry about anything. I even called my mom directly to make sure they got everything. She picked up, her voice strangely excited. "We got it. Sorry, sweetheart. There's no way we'd miss your graduation, right?" Hearing those words, I felt tears building up. I had waited 14 years to hear them. I booked a hotel near campus, almost $400 for 2 nights. That was 3 weeks' worth of work at Grace's, every shift, every tip scraped together. But I didn't mind. I called it an investment in a memory worth making. I also reserved a table at Via Rossi, an Italian restaurant. Just classy enough to mark the occasion, but not overly fancy. I even picked the menu ahead. The vegetable lasagna I remembered my mom liking, and the red wine cooked beef my dad once called, a dish you remember for life. Every week I called home to count down. 6 weeks left, Mom and Dad. Yep, I'm counting the days. Only 3 more weeks. Yeah, your dad's out looking for a nice shirt to wear. I held on to those replies like a lifeline, each word a knot in the rope of hope I'd clung to my entire life. But like everything else in my story, that rope began to fray 3 weeks before graduation. When I brought up parking passes on campus, my mom changed the subject, saying, "I'm cutting fruit. Honey, you're talking too fast." 2 weeks out, I texted her a photo of my graduation dress. She replied with a pretty dress, but that same weekend, the McCarters are throwing the biggest Super Bowl party ever. They're even hiring an outside chef. I froze. The McCarters. Super Bowl. 2 words I'd heard over and over growing up. Our famously wild neighbors who hosted huge parties every year. But this time, the Super Bowl weekend fell on the same weekend as my graduation. I thought you said you were definitely coming, I texted. It wasn't until the next day that I got a reply. Your dad's shoulder is acting up, he can't drive that far. You know I'm not good with highways. And Linda asked me to make cheesecake. She's counting on me, staring at the screen. My hand clenched so tightly it turned pale. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Sunday. The Super Bowl didn't start until 6 p.m. The drive from Toledo to Ann Arbor was just over an hour. They completely could make it, they just didn't want to. I texted, Mom, this is the day I've spent 4 years working toward. It's also the first time someone in our family will graduate from college, it's a big deal. She replied 5 minutes later with just one sentence. Don't make such a fuss, honey. There'll be plenty of other occasions. I bit my lip hard and went silent. I didn't send anything else. I went to pick up my graduation gown and cap from the student office. When the staff member handed me the pressed black robe and the cap with a shining purple tassel, I turned away quickly, afraid she'd see my eyes already turning red. Still held their seats at the ceremony. Second row, left side of the stage, 3 empty chairs. The night before graduation, I prepared everything carefully. My dress ironed, shoes polished. Honor cords draped around my neck, and my name listed in the commencement program. Natalie Moore, GPA 3.93, Pi Beta Kappa. At nearly midnight, I left my parents a voicemail. Tomorrow's graduation ceremony starts at 10. I've saved your seats. If Dad's tired, Mom can drive. Even if you're late, I still hope to see you. I'll be waiting. The next morning, I woke up at 6. Got dressed in silence. Pulled my hair back into a neat bun. Dabbed some blush so I wouldn't look too pale. I left the dorm early, walking through a morning fog so thin and grey, it felt like a sorrowful veil settling over my chest. The campus was packed. Everyone had someone. Some kids brought grandmas in wheelchairs. Little siblings ran through the grass wearing t-shirts printed with their graduate's face. Laughter. Names being called. The click of cameras. It all rose like waves crashing around me, and I walked to the student check-in area. In the pocket of my gown I kept my phone, just in case my parents arrived late. At 9:52 a.m. the screen lit up. My heart clenched. But it wasn't a message, it was a Facebook notification. Cheryl Moore had just posted 3 new photos. I tapped to open. The first picture was a food table overflowing with cheesecake, snacks, and chilled beer. The second showed my mother with Linda, both grinning in matching team jerseys. The third was a group selfie in front of a giant TV screen, captioned, Super Bowl Sunday greater than any other celebration. I checked the time. 9:56 a.m. I stood frozen. My hands trembled so much I had to raise one to steady the collar of my gown. When a voice rang out, Natalie Moore swallowed the lump in my throat, took a deep breath, walked out into the center of the field, surrounded by hundreds of clapping hands, not for me. I bowed to receive my diploma, smiled for the camera. And just as I turned to walk off stage, I looked over to the second row on the left. 3 empty seats, never used. After the ceremony, while everyone gathered for photos with their families, I slipped past them quietly, avoiding cameras, avoiding the pity in people's eyes. I walked straight back to the dorm still wearing my gown, and when the door closed behind me, I finally allowed myself to collapse, head in hands, and cried not because they didn't show up, but because I had truly believed this time would be different. 2 days later my phone rang again. It was my dad. I answered, my voice still raw, hello? His voice came through, light as ever. Hey Natalie, I need a favor, the roof's leaking. Like the back half collapsed. The fix guy says it'll cost around $3,200. Your mom said you got some graduation money. And in that moment, I realized, to them, the paper I held mattered less than a roof repair invoice. I don't remember how I ended the call. I just remember sitting on my bed afterward, motionless for nearly an hour. Phone face down on the pillow. Eyes locked on the tiny crack in the ceiling. That one sentence kept echoing in my head. Your mom said you got some graduation money. Not a single congratulations, you did it. We're not proud of you. No questions about how I felt. Not even a hint of regret for not showing up. Just a request. Once again, they needed something from me. I felt like an emotional ATM. 22 years of being approached only when they needed to withdraw something. Money, energy, patience. Even the last ounce of tolerance I had left. And the worst part was that I had let it happen for far too long. That night, I didn't sleep. I quietly opened the graduation photos Lily had sent me. Pictures of me standing with my friends, still smiling despite my red puffy eyes. Photos of me receiving my diploma, sunlight catching the folds of my gown, creating a glow that looked radiant but felt utterly hollow. I opened my laptop and logged into the employee portal of Greencap Investment Group, the company I had accepted an offer from 3 weeks earlier. A financial analyst role in their sustainable investment division based in Austin, Texas. I typed a short email to the hiring manager. Due to unexpected personal circumstances, I'd like to ask if it's possible to begin earlier than my original start date. I'm ready to relocate to Austin any time. The next morning, I got a reply almost immediately. We fully support the change. The company will provide 2 weeks of temporary housing. Please let us know your flight details so we can arrange your welcome. I read that line over and over like it was a lifeline. A new city. A place without words that cut deep. A space where I could begin again. This time, carrying no one's expectations but my own. I packed my things, not much, a few changes of clothes, my laptop, textbooks, and a single framed photo of me with Jared, Mel and Priya from an all-night study session. People who had stood beside me simply because they cared, not because they needed anything from me. Before I left Ann Arbor, I called my mom. I'm moving to Austin next Tuesday. I can't help with the roof right now, and I need some time to sort things out in my heart. When I'm ready, I'll reach out. Silence on the other end, and she replied with her voice tight with restrained irritation. You're talking like we did something terrible. Family helps each other. Don't forget who raised you. I bit my lip, trying to keep my voice calm. I haven't forgotten. But helping should come from love, not from guilt or obligation. I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I just whispered, goodbye, and hung up. That evening, I went back to the old pizza place where our group used to meet. Jared handed me a small leather-bound notebook with a note inside. Write the next chapter, in your own language. Mel hugged me and said simply, Austin has no idea what just hit it. I laughed. Genuinely. For the first time in weeks that laugh wasn't part of a performance. On Tuesday morning, I rolled my suitcase out of the dorm, taking one last look at the campus that had become my second home over the past 4 years. I didn't know exactly what awaited me in Austin, but I knew this. I was bringing with me the only person I could truly count on, myself. And that was enough. As the plane lifted off, I looked down at the tiny rows of houses below, feeling as if I was leaving behind not just a city, but an old version of myself. A version that had spent too long chasing validation from people who were never going to give it. I wasn't angry at them anymore. I had simply let go. Austin greeted me with blistering heat and a strange new air. Freedom. The temporary apartment Greencap had arranged was on the 12th floor of a modern building in South Congress, with a view that stretched out to the city skyline like a promise. It was small but clean, with a tidy kitchen and floor-to-ceiling windows that let sunlight pour in every morning. I had never lived anywhere like it, where nothing reminded me of duty and everything whispered instead. This is where you begin again. The first week at the company passed like a dream. Kind co-workers, a manager who genuinely cared, and no one pried into my personal life unless I chose to share. I had lunch with a few fellow new hires, walked home past scattered cafes, and bought the first bouquet of flowers I'd ever bought for myself, placing them in a glass jar on my desk. A simple act, but one that made me feel like I had control over something however small. Still, I hadn't called home. I hadn't texted. I wanted to give myself space. To be someone new, untethered from the roles of the good daughter or the family support bank. I needed to see what life felt like without my mother's criticism, without my father's skeptical gaze. To see if breathing could come easier without them, and it was easier to breathe. Until one Saturday morning. My phone started buzzing non-stop, one missed call after another. After 7 months of complete silence, the name Mom lit up on the screen like nothing had ever happened. My chest tightened out of instinct, but this time I didn't tremble. I didn't answer. The text came a few minutes later, short and casual. Dad and I are thinking of visiting Austin, and found cheap tickets for next weekend. Are you free? I stared at those words like they were a slow-moving wave inching its way back to shore. Not a single check-in for half a year, and suddenly they wanted to drop by. I wasn't sure what the real reason was, but I knew my parents. They didn't go anywhere just to visit unless there was a specific agenda. Hours later I replied, carefully neutral in tone. If you come, you should stay at a hotel near downtown. My apartment's too small to host guests. My mom read the message immediately, but didn't reply until that evening. And when she did, it came with a list of hotel options and a follow-up. Is this one close to your place? Pricey. Are you sure we can't stay with you? I held the boundary I had worked so hard to build. I'm sure. I need my own space to work, expected anger, at least some passive-aggressive guilt-tripping. But no. The next message came back unusually sweet. All right then. I'll book the hotel for 2 nights. Make sure you find time to see us, okay? In the end, I agreed to meet. Partly out of curiosity. Partly because I felt strong enough to face them. They arrived on a Friday afternoon. My mom stepped out of the taxi holding a bag of homemade cookies and wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. My dad looked noticeably older, more grey, a fuller gut, still wearing that same tired plaid shirt, his shoulders a little more stooped. I hugged them. Just enough to be polite. They hugged back, but I could feel the mismatch between us. I was an updated version of myself. And they were still the people who never understood why I had changed. That first evening, I took them to a Tex-Mex spot near downtown. My mom smiled awkwardly through most of the meal. My dad stared at the menu like he couldn't believe a taco costs almost $10. They asked a few polite questions about work. I gave them a summary. Finance firm, ESG investments, data analysis, risk evaluations for renewable energy projects. Mom nodded, but her eyes were still on her plate. Dad took a sip of beer, then suddenly set the glass down and said, "Actually, we came to Austin because there's something we need to talk to you about." I set my fork down, heart sinking with instinctive dread. I knew that line. I had heard it my entire life. It continued. My old buddy Doug, he's starting a small real estate company, kind of a startup, needs some early investors to get in on the ground floor. They're eyeing a suburb outside Dallas. If he can get about $5,000 up front, he says you can buy in as a shareholder. I figure with your finance background, you'd see the value in something like this. My mother chimed in, her voice sweet like artificial honey. Of course, we're not pressuring you. We just really thought this could be a great opportunity for you to help the family a little. I looked at them, the pair who had never once put me ahead of a football game, a meal, or a neighborhood party. The pair who let me walk across that stage alone and then called afterward only to ask if I had money. And now, after flying thousands of miles, their reason for finally seeing me was to ask me to invest in my dad's friend's business. I placed both hands on the table, clenched them tightly to stay calm. Then I looked straight into their eyes for the first time without flinching. And I asked quietly but clearly, "Did you come here for me or for the money?" Silence. The air around the table turned cold, solid. My mother let out a tight smile, leaning forward, her voice gentle, but something underneath that softness felt rehearsed. "Sweetheart, why would you say that? We're your parents, we came to see you. It's been so long, the investment thing just happened to come up, that's all." I didn't reply, I just looked, silent, holding their gaze like I was daring them to see everything they had always avoided. My father crossed his arms leaning back slightly, his lips tightening before finally snapping. "That kind of talk is disrespectful. I flew all the way out here and now you're acting like we're freeloaders." I took a deep breath, heart heavy, but this time I didn't look away. No, Dad, I'm just trying to separate love from obligation. Every time we needed family, we were an option. But whenever you needed something from us, we became a duty. My mother set her napkin down with a dry laugh. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's a small thing, you talk like we're villains or something. I shook my head gently. I couldn't cry anymore. The pain had crystallized into something clearer, like a scar that no longer stings but cools when touched by the wind. Do you realize that in all 4 years of college I never once heard you say congratulations? My graduation, the most important day of my life, I stood under that burning sun waiting for you, 3 empty seats. While you were posting pictures of tacos and beer at the McCarters, and you don't think anything about that is wrong. My final words came out in a near whisper, thick with emotion. My dad snapped, his voice hard and sharp. You're still a kid, talking like you've got all the answers. I sweated to raise you, and now you're lecturing me. Families are supposed to support each other. I thought you understood that. I looked at him, and for the first time saw it clearly. He didn't think he was wrong. He only saw my resistance. And to him, that meant I was ungrateful. My mother turned to me, her eyes beginning to glisten. She always used tears as a kind of passive weapon. Sweetheart, I know we've made mistakes. But you're so cold. Do you think it didn't hurt us when you left and never called? My reply came in a voice so calm it startled even me. I didn't leave, I walked away from a relationship that only ever flowed one way. And that's the only thing that kept me alive, stood up, picked up my wallet, left my card on the table. I'll pay for this dinner, like I've paid for everything else, including trust. My father called after me, voice rising with frustration. If you walk away now, don't expect us to open our hearts again. I turned back one last time. You don't need to open your hearts, you just need to learn how to look back. As for me, I've already learned enough. I walked out of the restaurant. Austin had just seen a light rain. With every step it felt like I was shedding a weight I had carried on my back for years. I walked home, raindrops speckling my jacket, my heart in knots, but lighter than it had ever been. The message came close to midnight. Can you drive us to the airport tomorrow morning? Taxis are expensive here. I didn't respond right away. I brewed a cup of hot tea, sat by the window, watched the city lights shimmer, like veins of life I never thought I'd be allowed to touch, and then, slowly, I picked up my phone and typed, from the hotel, walked 3 blocks to the metro rail station. The red line goes straight to the airport, $3.25 per person, safe travels. I set the phone down, turned off notifications, and returned to the warmth of my own space, no bending, no more waiting. I knew I had done the right thing, I had chosen myself, and this time, I didn't look back. 1 year later, on this very day, I stood on the trail circling Lady Bird Lake in Austin, my sneakers dusted, the early morning breeze brushing gently through my hair. The sun had just risen, casting a soft golden glow over the water. No one was beside me, and I didn't need anyone to be. I came here alone, but I was no longer the girl in the black gown who graduated in silence. I was Natalie Moore, Senior Financial Analyst in the Sustainable Investment Division at Greencap Investment Group. I had my own small apartment in East Austin, with bookshelves I built myself, photo frames filled with laughter and a cat basket by the sun-drenched window. I had a life no one handed to me. I built it, brick by brick, breath by breath. After that final confrontation with my parents, things didn't go completely silent, but quiet enough that I felt safe in the distance I had chosen. My mother still sent messages now and then, mostly about the neighbors, the weather, or gossip from Toledo. I responded politely, briefly, never letting those words find their way into my heart again. Drew clear financial boundaries, no transfers, no joint investments, no emergency rescues. I sent birthday cards with modest gift cards. I was no longer their backup bank. I was an adult with the right to say no. Last week, I was invited to join the advisory board for first-generation college students at the University of Michigan, a program supporting those without a family history of higher education. I said yes immediately, and this morning I'm meeting a girl named Alina, a junior from El Paso, unsure whether to pursue a degree in economics. She messaged me that her parents want her to be more practical and choose something less risky. I smiled sadly, reading those words. Because in that short sentence, I saw a reflection of my younger self, and for the first time I realized I no longer felt stuck in my past. I live in the present, a present I chose. I still go to work every day, still dive into reports, but now I also carve out time for myself. Saturday afternoons at the farmer's market, Wednesday night board games with my new circle of friends, and I no longer feel guilty for enjoying something simply because I want to. I've learned you don't need permission to be happy. On the coffee table in my living room, I keep a small photo frame. It holds a picture of me in my graduation gown, standing between Lily, Jared, Mel, and Priya. Not one of them shares my blood, but every single one of them is family, chosen, not assigned. The kind that never walked away, never demanded, never turned love into a transaction. I used to believe walking alone meant I'd failed. That if no one was there to clap, the victory didn't matter. But now, I know. Walking alone isn't failure. It's the beginning of freedom. I unlocked my phone, for the first time in a year, and posted that graduation photo publicly. No tags, no mentions, just a short caption, "A year later I understand." Walking alone isn't failure. It's the first step toward freedom. I left it there, no need for validation, no need for permission, just the truth as it stands. If you've ever found yourself standing at the edge between what your family expects and what your heart longs for, I hope you know this. You have a right to choose. You have a right to walk away, even if you have to walk alone. Not because you're selfish, but because you deserve a life that doesn't ask you to shrink in order to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. Leave a comment if this story speaks to you. And if you're somewhere on that hard road, I want you to know, you are not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Even if the people you're walking away from are the very ones who are supposed to love you most.